Fashion World have any questions, please comment on the Facebook or as well as the YouTube, so we could ask these amazing women these questions. So I'll hand it off to Tracy. You could start the panel.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want everybody to introduce themselves. So tell me where you're from, where you currently live, what you do as whether you're a designer, owner, how many years you've been designing, and just like a brief description of you overall. As far as me, I'm Tracy Hang. I'm originally from Michigan. I live in LA for 13 and a half years. I'm the designer for a women's plus size line in downtown LA. And I've been designing since I graduated in 2007. So yes, who's next?
Wants to start?
Chong, you want to start ahead?
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows. I mean, my name is Chong Cha, and yeah, I'm currently in California right now due to the pandemic. So I'm here for now, and don't know where I'm going to be in like a year or two. I went to fashion school. Sorry, it's like kind of disrespectful. Hey, Gracie, can you go out there for a little bit? Can you close the door because it's really like distracting. Sorry. Okay, if you stay here, you gotta be quiet because I'm doing a Zoom thing. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
That's Hmong for you guys.
That's a live session for you guys.
Yeah, she wants to hang out. So, okay. All right. Now that, Grandpa's gone, she's left. Okay, Gracie. Okay, I have to speak. Okay, so can you, okay, where am I at? Oh, yeah. So, I went to fashion school in LA. Yeah, you can lay down. I went to fashion school in LA, and then after that, I moved to New York in 1990. I think it was like 1997, 98. Yes, I moved there. I worked various company there, and then I think in 2012 or 13, I forgot what exactly year, but I launched my own collection, and then I've been doing that since then. But fashion is different now, and things are different. So I do more custom order now, and I'm still continuing to do that while I'm here in California. And I'm currently working on a wedding dress right now. So there.
Ooh.
Mai, you want to start on? Oh, here's Ming.
Hello. Sorry I'm
Hi.
late.
No worries.
Ming.
I mean, you're dark. It just says iPhone right now, so.
Your videos are on.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Hi,
I'm
Ming.
at our center where we're doing our live auction, right? And so I'm in the kitchen because everything else is locked by the kitchen. And it's noisy in the main room.
Oh,
So this is being Hmong for you guys.
yeah, right here.
So Meng just joined us, who is one of the owners of Hill Tribes. So right now we're just kind of going through each panel's title, year of design, describe if they own any business or summary of what they're doing at the moment, or like titles that they are. So right now, Mai, you want to start ahead?
Sure. So I'm Mai, and I'm originally from Minnesota, but I've been in LA for like 6 years, but I've been working in the industry for 7 to 8 years, pretty much after I graduated, like Tracy. And I work for a brand currently called Show Me Your Moo. Very like fun and bohemian. It's also in downtown LA in the Arts District. And yeah, I guess I went to school in Minnesota. I went and got my bachelor's there, and I pretty much just came straight to LA afterwards.
Pangra, you want to go next?
Sure. So hi, my name is Pangra. I'm originally from Fresno, California, but I live in Los Angeles now. I've been doing fashion for over 10 years, ever since after I graduated, stopped counting. But yeah, so right now I am a designer slash costing manager. My main role is a costing manager. So I work with factories overseas, negotiating price and working with deliveries. And yeah.
How about Meng? What about you?
I was originally from Nebraska and I moved to California 10 years ago. I don't ever consider myself really in the fashion industry, but in terms of doing sewing, probably about 8 years in terms of sewing, right? But getting into like really fashion and doing shows, probably about maybe 5 to 6 years. And me and my sister are independent designers, so there isn't really, like we work independently, but she and I are office ladies in our day job.
So did you guys your company is based in Fresno?
Our company? No, we are actually in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, Tracy, you want to start the panel and I'll just dip in and out for some questions?
Okay, yeah. Just a reminder that I just want everybody to remember that we are all speaking from our own experience. There is no right or wrong answers. So everybody just keep an open mind. And if you don't want to answer anything, just say pass, or I can just move on to the next question. So this is an open discussion. Ladies, feel free to ask each other questions if you want to in the middle of something. But I just want to also now transition into letting everybody know more about the industry, in that there is actually more than one position in it. So if somebody we can kind of go around and explain a position in it and explain a little bit of what it is. So one of the things that I'll start. So one of the positions in the design world is being a creative director, and usually that's like the lead, and that's somebody who envisions the whole line or the whole concept, and then they have designers underneath them. Does anybody want to describe like the other positions as far as designers and go from there?
Okay, so besides the designers, there's also like our pattern makers slash like tech designers, and they're the ones who pretty much kind of bring your designs to life by either drafting it or making the patterns, and that's what your garments are used to place on the fabric and then cut out and then like sewn. So that's the pattern makers.
Mai, you want to?
Sure, I'll jump in. I guess like one, obviously there's like designers that work underneath the creative directors, like Tracy was saying, and that's the job that I hold. We do a lot of the sketching, and we do a lot of just trying to figure out what people are, what the clothes are going to look like, what the fabric is going to be. And so we work with a lot of people trying to figure out all of those design details and just like make it come to life, I guess, from like sketches to real life. And then I guess like another person involved in this chain would be someone who works in production, maybe like a production assistant, somebody who works with the factories and getting the fashion garments sewn. This person usually works with like cutters and sewers. A lot like the people who I work with, they're always driving around downtown from like factory to factory and just like trying to get samples and garments made.
So does when you're a pattern maker, do you draw out like the measurements, flat, pretty much like, as a kid, like, you kind of like post wardrobe on like paper dolls, or do you literally like draw like a beautiful picture of the design, like what we usually see when a designer designs,
No, a pattern maker doesn't do the fashion illustration. It's the designers, the assistant. They're the one that are responsible to do the design, and then you give it to the pattern maker. And the pattern maker is the one that makes your sketches come into 3D. So first they start with the drape, but then you have to work with the pattern maker, because you can't just give a sketch and say, here, make this. The pattern maker is not going to know how far you want it from the neck down, like a neck scoop, or they're not going to know where you want the zipper. They're not going to know that your dress has a lining. They're not going to know that you don't want a lining. They need to know all that detail. They're not going to know that you want a bony. So you can't just give a sketch to a pattern maker and say, here, this is what I want, make it for me. I mean, from my experience, like, I mean, I've been in the industry, I mean, for like over 2 decades, and, I heard one of my last job, one of my assistant actually, when I left, she got onto my role, she took on my position, and, she wasn't experienced enough, but they needed someone because I left. And the pattern maker was complaining to me that she would just give them a sketch and then let them deal with it. And they're like, that's not how it works. The designer has to work with the pattern maker. The pattern maker, she can make it for you, but you still have to do a lot of the work too. I mean, she does the work, but you have to like tell her what you want. You can't just do it on a sketch. You have to tell her all the other little detail that you cannot see on a sketch. Like I said, like a bony, if you need bonies, you need lining, you want fusing on a certain type of fabric. Like let's say if you're using like a satin, but then you want the shoulder to look a little stiffer. Then you would have to add fusing, or if you don't want that, you have to tell your pattern maker you want shoulder pads. So there's all these, like, it's a lot more complicated than just you have a sketch, give it to a pattern maker.
Yeah.
So about Meng, like before you said you were a sewer more than a designer. Does all this make sense? Like what's you and your sister's, method of creating your garments? Is it literally like illustration to like, we're gonna just go out there and sew and find the right pattern? Or do you feel like, you guys actually pattern make every single thing to create your garments?
With us, right, it's concept, it's idea first. And then I will sketch, right? And then I will, because we're independent, right? So we do everything on our own. So, and then I pattern, and then I drape. I mean, I guess I just throw it on and do it because we're not like professional. We're not trained to do it, right? Me and my sister are not trained to do this. We didn't go to school for it formally. So like I tell people, it took me 7 years to really figure out how to make like a really decent pattern. So it's just a learning process with us. But the thing is, a lot of stuff is just concept and idea and just passion or wanting to create what you have in your head on a real person.
I just want to apply something to what you said. Yes, in the industry, a lot of things that I have learned. Yes, I went to school for fashion, but I was only taught ABC. So everything that I've learned is from experience. So yes, you can go to the best school and then come out. But I mean, you'll understand the basic of like how to make a pattern, how to sketch. Yes, that's fine. But to actually, do everything from start to finish production to learning the business, that cannot be taught at school. You have to have experience for that.
Yeah, that's one of my questions, actually. I was going to ask how important is a fashion degree? And then like, what set of skills do you actually need to be a designer? Do you need to know how to be, do you need to know how to sketch? Do you need to know how to sew? Do you need to know how to make a pattern? So if somebody could dabble into that and explain whether you need a degree and to what level.
Well, I will say this, certain company, they would prefer you to have a degree, but this is the fashion industry. It's all about who you are, how much money you have. So it all depends. You don't, it just depends the company. And like I said, I forgot that one designer's name, Rick something. He used to design for Christian Dior, then he went to Calvin Klein. I mean, he's like one of the biggest fashion designer, and he does not sketch. He doesn't sketch. He references pictures and he puts that together. But it's like, I mean, I've been working with various companies, and you have to have a fashion degree. You have to know how to sketch. And even now, like with technology, you have to know Illustrator. I mean, like when I went to school, I think there wasn't Photoshop yet, right? And I had to learn that on my own, but because I have the degree, I have experience, they were fine with that because I've built like a history of my experience. It was fine. But if you don't, and also a reputation, but if you don't have that, people are not gonna you know, they're going to judge you. They're not going to look at your creativity. So it all depends on like what area you want to get into. If you want to work for like a big company, mass market, then yes, you would need a degree. But if you have the connections, you know, the family, the friends, then sometimes you don't need that.
So what you describe with Rick, it's pretty much not so much of a designer, pattern maker, sewer, or anything. He's more of the creative director and the vision of the spring line or the fall line. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
he's a creative director, but he is the designer. You know,
Yeah.
somebody that is a fashion designer can also hold a creative director position. And I mean, that's what I held when I was at Rampage. You know, I was a designer, but I was also as well as a creative director, where you know I forecast, you know, what I think is going to be for spring, the colors. I pick my own colors. You know, I design my own prints. And from there, I set the move off for you know, and actually, I do all the designing myself because I am more of a hands-on. Sometimes I'll tell my assistant, you know what, like do a couple sketches, but most of the time, I'm actually kind of anal and picky, so I kind of like to do it all my own.
Any thoughts on this, Mai Pangra?
Yeah.
I agree with what Chong said, that, you know, it depends who you know and like where you work for. Like, yeah, some places they want you to have a degree, an associate's, a bachelor's. And I want to say like maybe, you know, like, and then like there are some where it depends who you know, and that's how you get your foot in the door. And then there's also ones where like you start from the bottom and you work your way up because you have the experience. So yeah, I agree with what Chong said. Mm-hmm.
With that said,
I think even going on top of that, if you what you want to do is create your own brand or have your own company, I would actually recommend maybe going to business school. There's so many like fundamentals that they will teach you in business. And when it comes to the fashion and creativity, I think that's stuff that you can learn with experience. And maybe you can even work with a designer, hire designers, pattern makers, sewers, and then get that hands-on knowledge. But at least you kind of have that fundamental business knowledge. But that's like really only if you're trying to start your own business or brand.
I
So
totally
May,
agree with you with her. She's totally right. I mean, if you're gonna start, if you want to start your own business, whatever everything she said is right, because you know the fashion business, you don't. I mean, honestly, I hate to say this, but you don't technically need a fashion degree to get into fashion. You have to love fashion to get into fashion.
Wanting to learn it and grow from it, yeah.
There are like, you know, fashion stylists or you know, bloggers. All of a sudden they're having their own company. I mean, look at the Kardashian. They have their own clothing, and there's no way they're designing that stuff. You know, they're hiring people to do that. It's all about, you know, if you have a name for yourself, then it's all about just branding your name. You don't necessarily.
So May, I feel like most of your line is couture, like, you know, hand sewed, pretty much. Like, could you guys just differentiate, you know, more like what usually we see on the runway is pretty much a lot of it couture, and sometimes we see a lot of you know, like streetwear. And like, could you guys differentiate and see, because I feel like a lot of younger people want to do out there couture, like French and, you know, European stuff, you know. So we talk a little about couture versus like streetwear and like simple wear and everyday wear. And so
I mean, there's different types of fashion categories. You know, you have fast fashion. That's like a Forever 21, H&M, Zara. Those are called considered fast fashion, where they produce in like, you know, thousands and thousands. And then you have like the contemporary. You know, that's I'm trying to think of name, like Alice and Olivia. You know, I can't, for some reason I can't think of names. And then you have and then you go into other categories like you know, the Missies, the moderate. I mean, those are the Missies. That's more for like working moms. They shop like at, you know, JCPenney, Macy's. And then you have the designers. That would be you know, the Prada, the Gucci's. Those are the designer brands. And then you have the couture. That's like the top of the top. Yeah. And the couture does not, you know, I mean, there is definitely a difference. Couture fashion does not show during Fashion Week. They show on a different season. So couture shows in the summer. And you know, then those designer brands, they will come out with their own line, which, you know, that's a couture line. So that's the difference. Anybody else want to?
So Ming, like, do you guys define your name, your label more couture than everyday wear, or how do you basically take that couture idea and like strip it down to make it more everyday wear?
Well, the difference between couture and everyday wear is everyday wear, you can have a couture that's considered an everyday wear.
Yeah.
Couture is the meaning behind of making the garment. It's like it takes time. It's like handmade. The beadings all handmade. Everything. It's like into details. The lining, everything. It's the difference of making it. Like other company, let's say Tory Burch or Donna Karen, they have their designer collection, but it's factory made. It's not like couture is like you make one item at a time.
Yeah, I mean, so Ming, like, what's your perspective on that, Ming?
Well, I mean, the thing is, right, my knowledge in terms of fashion is not as good because I tell people, right, what I do is my sister and I do it as an expression of art, more our expression, right, of what we want in fashion, what we want to do in fashion. So that's why it's couture, because we only make one piece, right? Typically, we don't mass produce it, and we only make it to fit that model. If somebody wants that piece, right, to fit them, then we will only make it to fit, them in terms of their size. And so that's why it's more for us. That's why it's more couture, because it's only one piece made specifically for that model, for that specific fashion show. We haven't even started mass marketing, even though there's pieces that we can mass market, right? It's because we are, we only make one piece, right? For us, it's trying to make it to the mass market, because we only want one piece and we have to sample it down to the mass market. It's kind of harder for us because it's kind of like our perspective is like we're like designer artists, right? And so trying to make it to a mass market is something we haven't figured out yet.
I mean, do you feel like if you have a pattern maker or a business person to help you navigate through stripping down your couture pieces into mass market, do you think that might be something you guys eventually want to get into?
We may, but the thing is, right, we're not at the point where we, because I work as a design team, right? So with my sister, it's, you also have to, wait for your partner, what, your partner, what they want to decide to what we're going to do. So that's the other thing is, you do it as a team. If your other partner is not ready to do it, then I have to wait until, my partner is ready to do it with us.
So we're talking about team. Do you guys have team that you guys work with? And how do you guys feel when that team member or that team don't like where you think fashion will be trending next season?
Well, I mean, the thing is, okay, we don't even follow fashion trends, okay? I mean, like we look at them, right? But it's about what we want more than anything. Right? So sometimes, right, my sister, because it's more about what we want, right? It's, we don't follow the trend. It's not part of fashion, right? It's part of just, what we think we like. I mean, we'll look at the trends, right? But if I don't like it, I won't do it. So that's why sometimes my sister says sometimes we start the trend, right? If people like what we're doing, then they follow us. If they don't like it, then this goes into a scarcity.
What about you, Pangra and Mai and Tracy?
Well, I think that following trends, it hits a different market. Like it would hit my market versus like Ming, where she's more like an independent designer, whereas Pingra and Mai and I, we're in the mass market where we would have to cater to our customers and our creative directors and our bosses. And our duties is basically making an item that will sell. Our job is to sell our designs, and we are not we cannot be tied to a design, and we have to be open to learning how to market it or price it down or eliminating certain design factors into the style so that it can meet our target price. And Maya and Pinga can explain it in their own way because they can relate to that.
Yes.
I feel like you hit everything on the nail. I don't know,
No,
Pinga,
like,
you work in costing, so maybe you.
Okay. Yeah, so like each like Chong has a different perspective of design because she's her own independent designer too now.
That's not true. I just wanted to clarify. I've worked with mass market before. I was the head designer for Rampage, and I'm sure you guys are
Yeah.
familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yes, I did that for like almost 10 years. So I know the mass market very well. I also, helped design their moderate, line, the other line in the house as well. So I've done everything from cheap goods to, evening. Yeah. So I've done everything. So I know like the whole aspect of, the industry.
Okay. I love that. I love that you have that experience, and then and then if anybody's interested, they can reach out to you because you have such a broad experience. And then since knowing that you're from New York and you live in California now, do you feel like location factors into being a designer and where you go in your career as far as like, is there any advantages, disadvantage, whether you live in New York or whether you live in Chicago or where you live in LA? Like, is there a difference?
I think it just depends on, your clientele, like who your customer is, where you need the inspiration from. So for me, when I was doing my collection, I mean, for me, I feel like I needed to be in New York because, my collection was evening wear, and I needed that inspiration. I need to be around the environment. It was a lifestyle. But if someone is more of like, let's say a boho chic, then, you can live in like Arkansas or, Mexico or California. But like if you're trying to design evening gown where you go to a gala or to an event, I don't really think it makes sense for you to be living in, let's say, like, Nebraska or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just doesn't. But like right now with the pandemic, and I have to say that with technologies today, I feel like you don't necessarily need to live any like I feel like I don't need to be in New York to continue my collection because you know what? I live there. I have the experience. I know the lifestyle. So I can still hold on to that. I have my friends, so it's like I still have it in here. And it's like once you have it, it's here. And it's not like I'm gonna stay here forever. Or let's say if I do decide to stay here, I'm still planning to continue to go back and just dip myself into my old lifestyle again, just to make sure that I don't lose it. So I think with today's technology, I think it's okay for you to like live anywhere else, but you got to make sure that you hold, that you understand your market and you don't lose it. And if you feel like you're slipping, then go where you need to be to get that inspiration.
So why LA rather than New York City? Since you're from Minnesota, like me.
Yeah, good question. I actually spent a summer in New York City and I loved it, but I think being somewhere, you really get a feel for what that city is. And I think it was too crowded for me. And, for being from Minnesota, like I need space. So I felt like California was a better fit for me. But I wanted to be somewhere where there was more of an industry, like easier for me to get a job. So that's like my main reason for going to LA. And what's cool about the brand that I work for is that a lot of our things are produced domestically. So like factories in America. And so I think if you are trying to do production here, like domestically in America, then location definitely is important. I think I mentioned earlier, a lot of when we're designing, sometimes we go straight to the factories and the contractors just to check the sewing quality, and doing something like that gives you more control over the quality and the price. And you just establish better relationships with people that way. Same with like fabric and developing trims. Like so many of those other industries are here. And I can set up a fabric appointment with somebody like tomorrow and see their collection of fabric so much easier. Whereas if I lived in a different city, that would be a lot harder to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I kind of feel like location is important. I think it depends what you see yourself doing also. Like if you want to do something that's like super like high-end fashion, then maybe New York is for you. But yeah, but I do feel like LA is very diverse. You could do pretty much anything here in LA. Like if you want to do swimwear specifically, then maybe Miami's for you. But yeah, I feel like location is important, and you know, there is the perk, you know, during the pandemic where everyone's working from home, you know, and it kind of opens up new doors. So, but yeah, but location is kind of, it is important depending on like what you really gravitate towards and what you want to do.
And about Meg, do you feel like you and your sister kind of stuck in Sacramento, right?
Yeah, we're stuck in Sacramento.
Yeah,
because
Sacramento,
because she and I actually, you know, because we're independent designer, we actually have day jobs, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't, you know, like our goal wasn't to originally start in fashion. Our goal was actually the typical, you know, your mom and dad tell you get a good job, right, to support yourself, right? So we follow that trend, right? And so she and I work in offices, but the thing is, I'm in the Bay Area, right, and I come to Sacramento to do fashion activity with her, right? And then I go back to the Bay Area. It's much different in the Bay Area versus Sacramento. But you know, the thing is, I want to move, but I can't move because she doesn't want to move because she has family there. You know, her husband and her kids live there. So if I move, right, then, you know, we kind of, we'll call it the connection of how we work is slightly different. Because, you know, at one point I lived in Nebraska and she lived in California. So it was really different then. So yeah, location for me is really important because I think, and also the thing is age, because me and my sister didn't start this until our late 30s. And yeah, we didn't start fashion
which is
until
amazing.
like in our mid 30s, right?
Yeah.
And so we pretty much have settled, right? And then we decided to do fashion, right? Has, you know, our passion and hobby, right? And so
Never
it
too late to
really,
start, you know?
yeah, because you can start at any point, right? But the thing is, it really affects location and how you will do what you want to do, right? Because I was telling my sister, well, if I started in my 20s, right, I could have gone to some really cool parties and made a lot of connections. But now me and my sister go like, after the fashion show, we just want to go home and go sleep.
Take a nap.
I mean, do you feel like your market, that's one of the big reasons that you guys are, you know, in Sacramento or you're in the Bay Area, do you guys feel like your market is catered towards more the Hmong community? That's why? Or
oh no, we don't market to the Hmong community at all, because that's not what we wanted to do, because we understand the Hmong market to a sense that, because couture right now, yeah, people, the Hmong people, right, they're starting to have good careers and they're starting to able to buy couture or one of a kind. They're willing to pay that outright. But you know, the vast part, 80%, maybe 90%, right? You know, they start bargaining with you for a dress and stuff. You know? So I go like, I don't bargain. You know, I spend a lot of time to pick materials and, you know, to make that dress, because I'm not what do you call it, a formally trained designer where I go, you know, I just like within, you know, and I work full time, and I'm like, I don't have that much time in my spare time to make you that dress. I ask for 3 months a lead time, because because it takes me time to fit first time, fit second time, you know, and then to do the final fitting to make sure everything looks good and fits you, right? And I go like, yeah, it's 3 months for me to finish a dress, right? If I'm doing specifically for that. So it's for us, right? A lot of time it's about time, location, and where you are. Because I don't typically, unless that person specifically give you really good measurements, then I don't particularly, you know, do long distance. I have to be able to drive to my customer or my client base.
Tracy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to tap back into what Ming was saying, that she didn't discover that she wanted to do this until the age of 30. So like, what made you finally decide to get into it? Like when did you, I mean, what inspired you to pursue it? And I already know the age, but I wanted to ask each individual, like at what age you discovered fashion and what inspired you to actually pursue it. So Ming, like what pushed you to actually pursue it?
Actually, I didn't discover fashion. Actually, okay, so me and my sister's background are totally different, right? I tell people like people come to their careers differently, right? And how you come to fashion sometimes is really differently. So my sister and I, you know, when we lived in Nebraska, we were always interested in art. That's why I say clothes for us is an art form, right? So So we were always interested in art, but our parents, Hmong parents go like, be practical, right? You have to get that job, right? Be able to pay your bills, right? So my sister and I were practical. We went to school. I went for business, and she went for like biotechnology or something like that, right? But she didn't. After a while, she didn't like it, right? And I'm like, oh, I can't do business, right? So I just became an artist. So, and so when I moved to California, it was more, I was working in the office and doing my art. And so she and I, we always been doing some type of art, like jewelry making, we like to paint, we draw and everything like that. And so we got into like costuming by going to the anime costumes, right? And we saw a lot of the homemade costumes, right? And so I went like, man, I can make those costumes. Man, I can do that, right? So we started making costumes first, and then my sister and I were just, still learning my basic sewing skills and making my costumes, and realizing, oh, I did that wrong. That sleeve wrong. I have to redo it again. So I kept ripping things like 100 times to resew, right? And so my sister asked me, because I started making dresses because this photographer who works for magazines and who does high-end editorial said my stuff is good enough because he wants to shoot the dress I had made in an editorial magazine, right? And I'm like, really? You think it's that good? So it was actually a photographer that told me my stuff is good enough to go into fashion magazines. And so that's how I guess found fashion. But the thing is, with fashion shows, I actually didn't want to do a fashion show because the thing is, I thought my skills were never good enough, right? My sewing skills, my seamstress, I'm not a seamstress. I can't sew. I can sew a straight line, and I can rip it apart and resew it 100 times, right? And so my sister asked me, when are you ever going to be good enough to sew? Because if you don't do it now, because my sister just got married and had a baby, we won't ever do it. Like, we won't have time to do it because, my family will start growing and we'll have more kids, right? But you got to do it now. So that's how I told my sister, if you can get me into a fashion show, then I will sew that collection for that fashion show. And so that's how we started doing shows. And from there, it just progressed. I think my sister went crazy because, like, she double booked me. Like, we did two mini fashion shows in one day. She booked me for 1 year. It was like every month there was like a fashion show. I'm like, stop, I have to keep sewing new collections. What am I going to do, right? And
That's
like,
amazing,
awesome.
though.
I'm still
A lot
working
of
full
work.
time. Yeah, I'm still
That's
working
amazing.
full time. And so that's how me and my sister started our fashion career. But the thing is, right, our goal, like our end goal was never to make money. Our end goal was to show the expression of clothes, because a lot of our stuff, right, is not, I call it's couture because it's avant-garde. It's about clothing, has the expression. Like, me and my sister made dresses, folding origami fabric and making fabrics and stiffing them to fold them into origami dress, and folding origami and stuff, made them into dresses and stuff. So, and then like my sister, because she cosplays and follows costuming. She showed me this thermoplastic called Warbla, and she and I made cage skirts to show on the runway. So, and I just made girls wear black bodysuits or white bodysuits, and I made these skirts to go on top as expression of like a line drawing of a skirt or a dress. So it's more art for us rather than, I'm going to sell this piece at the end of the fashion show. And yeah, people have chased me to sell that piece. And I'm like, but it's Warbla, it melts at 89 degrees. I don't think you can take it out.
How about you, Pangra? Like, was it art for you that inspired you to get into fashion, or what was it?
Yeah, it was definitely art at first. I mean, I think my, being around like my mom and my grandma growing up, watching them, make Hmong clothes, the hand embroidery. I think that really like sparked my interest in the very beginning. But then also like, growing up, like not, we weren't the richest family growing up. And so, the things that we couldn't get to, like we could only admire, right? And so there was definitely that. And then it really hit me that, okay, I want to do fashion was when I was like a senior in high school. Because, everyone's picking a college, everyone's picking like something to major in. And I was like, oh crap, like I haven't even applied to a college. Like I don't even like, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And so I took an art class, and I also had the high school that I went to, they offered like a fashion design class. And so I took those two, and oh, and I also took like an AP bio class just in case like all things fail. And I have to like, I have to go to like, you know, like major and be like a nurse or a doctor just to satisfy my parents, right? But yeah, like I taking art and fashion, like those two really like resonated with me. And so that's when it clicked, and it was like, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna go for it. So yeah.
What about you, Mai?
Mine's like so embarrassing. Like I watched, you guys know that movie, The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan? So like her mom was like a fashion designer, and I remember being like a kid and being like, that is the coolest thing ever.
Are you sure it wasn't 100 Dalmatian?
No, it wasn't. I like wanted to be like Lindsay Lohan's mom, like in like London or whatever. And I was a really creative child, and I loved drawing. So I think ever since I saw that movie, all I did was like sketch and draw. And then and then I decided to just go to school and just see if I could make a career out of it. So that's how that happened.
How about you, Chong? What age did you find, and what inspired you to become a designer or get into fashion?
Actually, I didn't know that it was always something that I wanted to do. I do remember when I was a kid, I used to cut up my Barbie doll's hair, cut up socks, make, tube dress. My mom would get mad at me. And when Madonna was hot, I used to wear like undergarment outside, like a 6-year-old playing outside. Mom would get mad at me. And then, when I was in school, like in junior high and high school, I literally would not, every weekend, I would not hang out with any of my friends. I would spend every weekend locked in my room, figuring out an outfit to wear from Monday to Friday. And I would have it labeled Monday through Friday. So I already know what I'm going to wear from the whole week. And I always make sure that I don't wear the same outfit twice throughout the whole school year. So I didn't, my parents didn't have money, but everybody actually thought that I was very wealthy because they never saw me with the same outfit. But it's just actually, it's the same clothes, but I just kind of like play around with it, add accessories. And I did that throughout my junior and high school year. Everyone didn't know that, but I literally did that. I would spend like, the whole weekend doing that. And then, when I had to pick a college, I originally wanted to be an artist, a painter, but I didn't realize that fashion was my calling until I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to be a starving artist living in a loft. So, I love fashion. I'm going to do something that I love. And so I went to fashion. And, when people ask me that question, I think back, wow, I guess it was something that I always loved because, from, making clothes to my Barbie dolls and locking myself up in my room, to figure out outfits. It's, I guess,
That's so everybody's answer is so relatable. It's like we all love art, and that's why we pursued it. And that's honestly like why I pursued it too. Is like I just knew I was not a good artist. I couldn't sketch like that well, but I like to draw. I like to draw clothing. So I started this at 4th grade. And then I just pursued it. I'm like, okay, I want to be a designer. And then I just followed through, even though I was a tomboy. I was like, I was not a fashionista, and I didn't dress up like that at all. I was always like in sports and clubs, but then I pursued it. And then that's when I learned what fashion really was. One of the obstacles was, how supportive is your family in pursuing this career, because it's not very common. It's not very known. Your parents want you to be like a doctor or whatever. But for me, I was very fortunate where my family did support me. I know that's not the case for some of you, unless I'm wrong. But I would like each one of you to discuss that. Like, was your family supportive of you? Like, what flashbacks did you get from your family for pursuing design?
For me, my mom was the one that was not supportive. I think because, I think also being like a woman, like, they really want to make sure you pick something that you can support yourself, right? And so when I told her I wanted to go to school and it was going to be LA for fashion, we got in a big fight. We got in a big fight because she just didn't understand why I wanted to do it. but yeah, but other than that, my dad was the supportive one. I guess because like I was determined, like I knew where I was going and I knew what I wanted to do and I was adamant about it. And so I think that's where my dad, he like, he trusted me and he believed in me because he felt that I believed in myself and what I wanted to do.
Nice.
Mhm.
So how do you navigate that with your mom? Like, did you kind of just like, my dad supported me, so I'm just gonna ignore everything my mom is thinking and just pursue it? Or like,
No,
did
it,
you
it
like
was
how would a young girl who is dealing with that same situation, what advice would you give to that young girl of dealing if one parent doesn't support you?
it definitely was not the easiest because okay, let me she was not the easiest because I think in a way they test you. They test you by, with their negative remarks just to see if they can break you. And so I think the best thing to do is to really focus on what you want to do and keep going for it, because they're going to try to break you to test you to see if that's what you really want. And so that's what I did. Like, although I knew she wasn't like for it 100%, I just kept doing it. I just kept doing it. And like, I was determined to prove her wrong. And so, but yeah, I say just keep going and believe in yourself and don't let anyone break you.
The same thing with me, or my mother does not support this, right? She always complains about how much money I spent and how much money I don't make. And I always tell her, right, I didn't get in doing this to make money. I tell her, my father and my brother, they hunt and fish. They spent just as much money as I do on my materials and, time that I spent away from family and everything. But my mom, I understand my mom's concern because she's always like, because I'm unmarried. So, and I'm older. And so she's like, what are you going to do when you get older? You're not married. You don't have the husband to support you. And I tell her, right? I tell her, well, this is America. I wasn't expecting, because we grew up in Nebraska, very Americanized. And I tell her, I never expected a man to support me. A man can help me, right? And I want a man to be my partner, right? But I told her this is, I don't, because the Hmong culture is when you marry a man, right, you take on a man's name, right, and you take care of his family, right. And I tell her, I want a partner. I don't want to take care of him and his family. We should do it together, not me doing it, right. And so it's a concept of like my modern idea versus her very traditional idea. We still fight over it. Even today, we still fight over it. But the thing is, my sister and I say, we tell my mom the reason and we continue on because it's not about, her happiness. It's about what we want to do. And
I mean,
we
do you
really
feel
are
like just because like the generational gap, do you feel like because you have your sister's support to pursue this together, you have that, pillar, the support, the foundation to continue going? I mean, like if it was like someone like Mai or Tracy or Pangra or Chong, like didn't have that during the, the time period, I mean, the generational gap, do you feel like it would be much harder not having a sibling to support you?
Well, I mean, like my siblings are very supportive. Except for my oldest brother, he's much more has a traditional, right, and what he wants in a woman traditional, but he doesn't expect that from his sisters, because he grew up with us. He understands that. We had conversations about his ideas versus ours, and I'm just like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, and that's what you want. Then go ahead and do it, but I'm not going to do that. So he kind of understands that. But the thing is, yeah, my sister and I are supporting each other. But the thing is, she and I also fight really bad about the direction of like our fashion shows and what we're gonna do. And we have fought so bad that argue so bad over details, right? That she and I, decided not to talk to each other, right? Because 2 weeks before this fashion show, we had a big fight, right? We decided not to talk to each other for a week, right? And then after the first week, right, we decided, okay, we committed to this, we're gonna do it, right? We finished it, right? And we go like, okay, we fought, but we made it, compromised, and we made it, right? Let's continue on.
And one day it's gonna be like the sisters split up, and one start a brand called Hill, the other start a brand called Tribe.
But you know, the thing is like we committed to doing it, right? And we finished a commitment, and then we came through the other end. We got like, it was bad, but you know what? What's the point of all this work if we don't continue on? You know? What's
What
the
about
point?
you, Mai?
Yeah.
Like, have you been? Did you get support from your parents, or?
They definitely tried to deter me. They thought it was weird and like unsustainable in terms of like making money. Of course, they wanted me to become a doctor because I did really love school. And I think my dad in particular felt that I excelled enough in school that I could become a doctor. And so I think it was hard during like my teenage years, just trying to figure out, well, do I really want to pursue fashion, or do I want to, you know, kind of go in the path of like becoming a doctor? And I think at the end of the day, my parents knew that I had like I was going to pick whatever I wanted. And I think at the end of the day, what mattered was that they respected my decision, even though they didn't agree. And it wasn't like, I feel like it wasn't too much of like, it didn't cause like a rift in our relationship or anything. But it was definitely a little bit difficult trying to convince them. And I think they were more concerned with me moving to LA and being away from them more than anything.
Yeah, and I also want to add, I think it's, you know, the parents that like, you know, that are against it, I feel like it comes from them being unfamiliar to it. It's the unknown that, you know, causes them to fear, you know, our decisions. And because I remember when I told my mom, she was like, what is that? Like what do you want to do? So, but yeah, and I had a teacher, I had to tell her, you know, like what it is. And, you know, and I kind of had to like convince her in a way. So
I mean, did you feel like, because fashion has been in the Hmong culture forever because of clothing, and it's pretty much just like, do you guys feel like fashion and their definition of fashion is you make a garment all year to just wear to the new year? And how are you going to make a living off of that unless you're making double so you could sell it to somebody at the new year or getting ready for the new year, you know?
Yeah, I think for my mom, it was definitely just like the unknown of it, of like she had no idea that there was like that, like a market for that, you know? I think because them growing up, all they ever like really focused on was what can make the most money, right? And that's like becoming a doctor or, you know, something else. So, but yeah, and I had to explain that to my mom that it's like fashion, you know, it's like everybody needs clothes. Everyone's gonna wear clothes. No one's, it's always gonna
You're like, you go to Walmart to go buy that shirt every day. You think that turquoise came from?
So that was me, you know, like trying to convince her. And that's when like the light bulb clicked and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
So since talking about family and stuff like that, and a lot of, you know, this conversation that's been going on within the Hmong community and social media about patriarch, and how do you guys navigate that? Did you guys struggle with it, or do you guys see it? I mean, everyone's experience could be different, so there's no wrong answer, you know, because my perspective is how do we as the next generation, not so much of like end all patriarch, but understanding that system and how do we navigate and grow from it? You know what I mean? So how about you guys?
Chong can answer. Chong,
The
you
Hmong, patriotic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to tell the truth, I haven't like lived around the Hmong community for like over 25 years. So it's kind of hard for me to, you know, I guess, I don't know, express myself because I don't know. But I mean, like for me, I still consider myself Hmong. When I design, I don't design for the Hmong people. I design for everybody. You know, I consider, you know, Hmong, black, white. I design for a certain lifestyle, a certain taste. So I don't know how I would answer that, you know, because I don't know. I haven't lived around the Hmong community.
I mean, Panga, Mai, maybe you guys have a younger perspective, and Maine, maybe you have a generational gap perspective, a patriarch, and how do a Hmong girl navigate through that? You know, or trying to get to get that boy cell within, you know, men's system, you know?
Well, the thing is, right, because my sister and I grew up in America, well, in the middle of America, right? We, you know, it was in that small town of 12,000, right, people that lived there, right? It was just my uncle that was the other Hmong person, right, and their family and us, right? My sister and I spoke English better than we spoke Hmong. My parents were Christian, so they didn't teach us, you know, like any of the traditional. And my dad, we were his second family, right? And so my dad was very hands off, even though, you know, my mom made the day-to-day decision, discipline, right? My dad was very hands off, even though I know a lot of relatives did bother him because he was like considered an elder with his problem. But we didn't have enough visitors where I was forced to cook or do any of that stuff. And since we're Christian, right, we didn't do any of the shaman things or anything. And I tell people, right, it's about education, knowing, right, and deciding what you want to do in life and what you're willing to do, because it's, you know, like my sister, you know, my younger sister married a more you know, a shaman family, right, and so they were much more traditional. So she chose that, you know. So my other sister married somebody who was Christian, so they chose that, right. And so it's about choice and understanding, you know, like the choice that you're going to make, and, you know, are you willing to, you know, follow the you know, the standard, or what you're willing, what the knowledge, I guess it's knowledge. I always tell people, educate yourself, right? Just educate yourself, right? Don't marry young. If you're going to marry young, educate yourself so you know what you're getting into.
But Tracy, I mean, Tracy, Mai, Pangra, any comments or your perspective about patriarch, and how do our community can navigate that to a better understanding of each other, you know, from the men to the women to the girls to the boys, you know, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been a struggle since the beginning of my life, because I've always been really like independent and outspoken, which is a bit abnormal, I would say. So I think for me, the easiest way to navigate was to actually find who my allies were. And, you know, like I would say my brother is one of my allies, and I think he's like a total feminist and he's really like educated himself. But I also have like Hmong guy friends and even like cousins who I consider to be my allies, who I can be honest about my experience with. And I actually find that the change comes from those allies kind of going back to the other guys and being like, hey, you know, we should be treating our Hmong sisters this way, or like this is wrong. So I think that's where I've seen the biggest change. And, you know, it's allowed me to feel like safer too. So
Yeah, I feel like it's for me it was like communication. Well, because like I'm the youngest out of 4 kids, and so I felt like it was easier for me to kind of like express myself to my parents of like what I felt like wasn't right, or, you know, what was unfair. So, and I've always made an effort to kind of like to communicate with them in a calm way, so they can understand things. So I would say communication.
Tracy?
I think the same with me. It's just communication, because your parents are like, they don't know much unless you explain to them and you learn to communicate with them in a way that they can understand. So I think my biggest thing was just communication, like Pingra said, and knowing where I stood and knowing what I wanted and explaining it to them so they can understand. But my parents were never really, they never hounded me like that. And I didn't grow up around a Hmong community. So my experience also like kind of like Chong, where I didn't really have the Hmong community like that, and I didn't have people pushing these obligation and expectations onto me as a Hmong American girl. So I can't really like relate to the patriarchal system.
Yeah,
So
and also like with my family, I mean, like all of my sibling, my cousins, everyone's married outside of the race. You know, like half of my family is mixed now. You know, and it's even like my niece who's mom. You know, my brother ex-wife is Hmong. They only have one child, and she's Hmong, and she doesn't even speak Hmong. You know, I mean, I don't know about other community in other cities, but I know that for sure, like where you know where my family are, we're like the only Hmong family here, and it's just I don't know, very little few Hmong people here, and all of the kids, they have no clue how to speak Hmong, and it to me it's very sad, you know.
I mean, so
didn't.
talking about, being women, do you guys feel like being a woman in the fashion industry affected you to excel within the fashion industry, or just being among women trying to pursue fashion
I don't think
rather
so.
than a
No.
guy? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they, well, from my personal experience, I don't think they look at me for like my ethnicity. I think it's more of my race. Like there is that stereotype where it's like, oh, they're Asian, they're probably more hardworking, right? So I feel like there's definitely maybe a perk, more of a perk in it than anything. Mhm.
Well, from my experience, people just assume that I work with a lot, like pretty much just Koreans, and people always just assume that I'm Korean, and I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to speak Korean, so I don't think it really affects me being Hmong, but it does affect me being like a different ethnicity and being in in a industry where it's like dominantly Korean owned companies, and then all the fabric companies are pretty much like Persians and Jewish people. So I feel like that dynamic does affect me sometimes because there's a language barrier. And then if there's miscommunication, it's because of the language. But then, that's where I pick up reading body language. So I guess that's, I mean, it doesn't really affect it, but yeah.
For me, I don't think it has anything to do with me being a female Hmong, because first of all, in New York City, nobody knows what Hmong is, and my name Chong, it's such a masculine name, so usually when they see my resume, they don't know if I'm a woman or I'm a female. But one thing in New York City that I do notice is that they really want you to go to a good school. So if you didn't come from, let's say, Parson or St. Martin, there's no way you're going to be able to like get a job like with a designer house, and that's just how it is in New York City. If you went to like a fashion school somewhere where they've never heard of, your resume is probably going to get tossed on the side. And also depends on where you intern. It's really important, even if, let's say, you didn't go to like a very good school, but somehow you had the connections and you were able to intern like at Oscar de la Renta. I mean, to them, it's in New York City, it's more about status. I mean, they don't really care who you are. That's how it is in New York City.
Yeah, in LA, it's totally different. My experience as far as like education, I feel like sometimes it didn't even matter what school I went to. Like, even though I had a bachelor's degree and I paid like 60 grand for that school that was based in Michigan and they never even heard of it. Um, I feel like it was discredited because I had an experience where a girl was hired onto our team and she had 1 year experience. And then I found out that she made pretty much as me, or like she made more than when I started and I had a degree and I had experience. So I feel like it really does depend where you are. Like you said, in New York, I think I wouldn't have been able to get a job. So with that said, like I don't know if you guys had the same experience, Pangra and I don't know if um internship matter, or if education mattered, if it was judged or not. Did it factor into you getting a position? If you guys want to speak on like your internship experience as well.
I did have an intern experience. It's very important because it shows that you're determined and you want to learn, and that you want to get your foot in. So I think it's definitely important. I interned at BB as a tech assistant.
What's
As a tech
BB?
assistant. BB, I don't know if they're around anymore.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I don't think they are.
But yeah, it was like years ago. But yeah, I think it's very important. If you can get like an intern anywhere, do it. But if you can, like, get one that's within like what you want to do, like a category that you want to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very important. Let's say, like, if you want to design evening wear and that's your passion, but you got a job working doing children's clothing. And years later, you're like, I want to get out of there. I want to follow what I really want to do. It's going to be really hard for you to get a job in the evening, to work with an evening company, because they're going to look at your resume and your experience and say, okay, well, you don't have any experience in women's evening, but all your experience is, children's wear. So it's like, if you have a category that you really want to focus on, I mean, for me, I personally advise the person to try to get into that internship with that industry and I mean that category and stick there. But if you keep moving around, or if you're not going into the category that you want to be, it's going to be very hard for you. You're still going to be in fashion, but just a different category that you're not going to be happy with.
Yeah.
Mike,
What's
do you
your
have any
advice?
experience?
Yeah.
Internship or?
Yeah. I guess like going on what was spoken on earlier, like location. I also think like class and status. Yeah, I think that definitely plays a factor. Like, I spent a summer in New York just interning somewhere. It's like not really a well-known brand. I was just interning with startups just to get my foot in the door, just get any experience because I was so desperate. But I was like so broke just living in New York as like a college student. And
Where
like
did you live?
I was in Lower East Side, and I
That's
was
probably
just like,
why.
I know. I didn't know what I was doing. I just was like, I just want to be in New York, get my foot in the door. And I just feel like, not being in the locations for internships and also not being able to afford to live there does create barriers. So I think maybe like as a Hmong woman, that might be a barrier, just like money. Like there's, I remember looking into trying to intern at like BCBG in Los Angeles, I was so desperate, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to afford that. So, but yeah, it's definitely really important in terms of getting your first job. I think having any experience allowed me to move to LA, and I actually got my job through like a temp agency, who like connected me with someone who was looking. And I definitely recommend temp agencies for your first job if you're just, if you need something quick.
I have to say, if somebody wants to get into fashion, relationship connection is the most important of all.
Networking, yes.
Mhm.
My first job,
I hate networking.
my first job
Moua
in
has the biggest network here out of all of us.
was through someone that I used to work with, and I told them I was going to New York City. So they had a friend that has a company there, and that's how I got my first job in New York City. I didn't like the stuff that they produced. I mean, my first job in New York City was designing Christmas sweater, like the ugly sweater, but I didn't know anyone in New York City. Yeah, I didn't know anyone in New York City, and I was like, I don't know anything about sweater. I don't have any background experience, and they want to hire me just because I'm a friend of a friend. They didn't care. They're like, okay, we're gonna pay you $400 a week, and I was like, well, that's not much, but I was like, you know what? I don't know anyone, so I might as well just take it. And you know what? One thing I learned when I was going to college, I had student loans, right? And I had to pay to educate myself. One second, Gracie. But when I got that job, I was like, you know what? Let me just take this way. And for me, I think this is a great advice for kids out there. Just doesn't have to be in fashion. But when I got that job, I was kind of sad about the $400 a week, but then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm getting paid to learn. So every day I went into work, and my mindset was like, I'm going in, I'm going to learn. And I have to say that job taught me so much, because it taught me how to design embroidery, taught me how to design beading, because all of my other job, I mean, that was something that they needed it. And the reason why I got hired, into other companies like an evening company, because I had the technicality of how to design a full beading design dress.
So from piggybacking on that, like I remember, going to like the fabric store, Joann's, with my mom, like picking up fabric and stuff like that, and also like being a young kid and sitting next to her while she like works in like sewing, like in people's basements sewing stuff, So like I was exposed to, of the sewing, the garment stuff. Do you guys feel like as our culture, we become in these mixed relationship, and or the next generation, it's literally all about TikTok and and Instagram and social media. Do you guys feel like the simple thing of what we grew up is learning how to embroidery and like make Hmong garments and pandao, do you guys feel like that's slowly dissipating? And how do you guys, fashion designers or in the fashion world, come together? And
look, my 3-year-old niece, she has a Samsung. She knows how to work this thing, and she's on it right now. I'm babysitting. I don't need to do anything. It's like if I try to teach her how to like, do embroidery, she doesn't want that. She wants her tablets. Kids these days is all about technology.
Yeah, I mean, but how do we implement our culture back into this next generation? Like, what do you guys think? Like Meng?
It's hard.
Yeah, that's
Meng?
hard.
Or Pang or Mai or Tracy?
Well, I mean, like my sister and I, I think it's just education. We say like, I mean, like my sister and I, right, grew up wanting to not be Hmong, not to be Hmong, right? But we were educated, where my parents kind of in a way, it's so strange, my uncle kept telling my dad that, since we're gonna live in America, we should be American, right? So he didn't teach his kids Hmong at all. My parents, to a sense that didn't care, right? And so when his kids grew, right, there was always a disconnect, right? But with my parents, right, we still were able to communicate and everything, right? And my mom tried to teach me how to do bandao, but I wasn't interested in it, right? But the thing is, it's about reflection now. 30 years, past, right? And now I want to learn how to do it. I think it's you have to teach people who want to learn how to do it. If they don't want to learn or they're not interested in it, there's no point in showing or teaching them to do that, right? Yeah. So you have to generate the interest in people wanting to learn or wanting to do it. If they're not interested and they're not interested, like I tell people, don't force anything on people who don't want to do it. I mean, if they want to come back because they regret, then that's different. But maybe
are you guys afraid that our Hmong culture is slowly gonna just disappear? And because like through our history, every single place we migrate to, we incorporate that culture a little into our bandao, into our so.
Yeah, I think it's slowly disappearing. I think that now the designs are all printed and they're not like hand embroidered. There's like the hand technique is gone, the workmanship is gone. So I think everything's like following a trend, right? So it's just like TikTok. You follow the next trend, you do the next TikTok challenge or whatever. It's just like these kids, they're all on Samsung. So everything's just like a trend and everything's becoming mass produced. I wanted to also ask, and you ladies, like, what are your views on companies and other cultures using Hmong influenced designs and appropriating it? Like Pengra, Mai, how do you guys feel about that? Because you work in the main industry. So how do you feel about that?
I'm like okay with it. I feel like as long as the credit is given,
But it's never really given.
Yeah, but true. It's never really given. And I think that's where the issue is and, where the problem is. But I feel like as long as that credit is there, kind of like how Tom's shoes, right? I don't know if everyone's seen the new Tom's shoes out there with the Hmong print on it. That credit was given. And so that's why, like, Tom's shoes.
What's that?
It's a shoe. It's a shoe brand.
You're talking about Hmong guys.
And everyone is supporting that. Every Hmong girl wants a pair because that credit is given. So yeah, I'm for it if that credit is there.
I mean, if they could just go to like Hmong Village and buy one at a cheaper price.
You just gave somebody an idea, Doua. Somebody's hard.
Don't do that.
Tell me the Hmong market next.
Actually, I bought a 2 suitcase loads of Hmong clothes when I went to Laos, like old clothes. We went to this market and I was like, oh my God, I want this, like these antique, and this Hmong lady's like, oh my God, why is this like American person buying all these old clothes? But she has no idea I was buying it for inspiration, or one day I'm going to make something out of it.
Yeah, when I went to Laos, I could not find the old traditional stuff. Everything was just like new, like.
I bought it all.
Tom took it all.
Yeah, even in Laos, like everything's like printed and everything is embroidered. I could not find those like old school like workmanship pieces, and I was like so sad about it. But
did you know it's really popular? Like I think my sister was talking to this one lady in China, right? And what she does is she goes to the Hmong villages and she buys all that stuff, right? And then they reuse it, right? So right now it's really on trend or really popular, the Chinese people, and they come and they buy all the stuff now.
Yeah.
And they resell it.
Going off of that, I found it really interesting because someone sent me, it was like a factory sent me a request on LinkedIn, and I went to go look at their factory bio, and they had like Hmong clothes. It was like a factory in China, but they had like Hmong clothes there. So I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't know if like they're working with Hmong people, and
I mean, there's some lines that repurpose
Yeah.
what's created and repurpose and put their label on it. So, so being in this industry, and also like a lot of you guys, have social media platforms, and being women, and what our world's going through right now. And did you guys ever felt like bullied or cyberbullied, or being racism charged, or like, how do you guys deal with that? Because there's just a lot going on in our world, and during this pandemic, how do you guys deal that with like your brand, your social, your blog, or social media outlets? Like, how do you guys deal with that, or any experience?
I think fashion, I've never experienced, bully or racism in fashion, because fashion is such a diverse career. But just as an individual, yes, I've experienced racism, prejudice, just like walking out in the city, in Los Angeles and San Francisco. I mean, I'm sure, as you know, last year I was, called the Chinese virus, walking my 2 dogs, being threatened, harassed. And then a month later, my dog, this one actually got, attacked on the street, So that's one of the reasons why I came to California, to be with my family, just to feel safer during the pandemic. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think fashion, has any effect on it. I just think it's, what's happening now. And even before that, it's outside of the fashion industry that is happening.
How about Maya and Pangra and Meng? Like, did you guys ever felt bullied, or Tracy like felt bullied? And how do you guys handle that? Just for the everyday young girl, out there that feel insecure and been bullied, and how do you guys come out of that?
Well, I grew up in Midwest, a lot of white people, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's never been fashion or art people that, did the bullying. It's other people who are ignorant of you and ignorant of what you are that did the bullying, right? But I just tell people, maybe because, like I have an artist mindset, or I create my own world, and I never particularly care that much about, what other people call me, or, I do my own thing. And so maybe I never minded as much, but my younger sisters really minded. Because we're, Asian, right? And 12,000, right? There's like just 4 Asian girls in this, town of mainly white people. My sister felt really uncomfortable because I always felt like there's always eyes on them, people looking at them, people judging them and stuff. They minded a lot more what people were thinking about them and, stuff. But I never had that issue, maybe because I was already strange, or a little eccentric myself already, and I already had eyes on me. I didn't care that much.
Pangra or Mai?
Yeah, definitely not haven't felt any racism, within the fashion industry. But, I did, growing up, I think me and my siblings, we were probably the other Asian family in the elementary school that we went to. And, for the most part, some kids were friendly and some weren't. And I think what really changed it was when I guess I started speaking up and defending, I would defend myself just to let them know that, hey, I have a voice. I can defend myself too, I think that's what I did. Yeah, I would speak up. Mm-hmm.
But you, Mai, I mean, since growing up from the Minnesota, we know we experienced it all over there. Not that you guys, other people haven't too, but I could relate to the Minnesota world.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely grew up in the suburbs, so a lot of white people, and definitely some racism and bullying there, not as much, but definitely there. But I think in terms of cyberbullying and social media, I don't know. I think as a young girl, I definitely did experience a little bit of it. I don't know if anybody remembers Asian Town, but
Asian Avenue.
Yeah, Asian Avenue. Definitely,
God.
like, today's like TikTok and Instagram, right? Like, I feel like today you're dealing with a different set of problems. It's like cyberbullying has really is exponentially on the rise. Like for me, it was just such a tiny scale that it didn't impact me that much. So I don't really like have any experiences in terms of what's going on now, because I'm actually pretty much off social media. Like I feel very unaffected. Like if I received a comment today, I don't think it would really affect me. But I would imagine, like, yeah, as a young girl, like even back then, it was a little bit difficult to deal with racist comments or even just cyberbullying on like Asian Avenue. So, and I have no advice whatsoever. Just, yeah.
Tracy?
I don't really get bullied, but I definitely get judged. Always being like a thicker Asian girl, I've been judged my whole life by family, by friends, not wearing, I mean, in high school, I got judged for what I wore, which was always the same thing, always in sportswear because of my status, my parents not being able to afford it. But yeah, I've always just let it go in one ear and out the other, and then discovered my own self-love and self-awareness through it. I think everything that is thrown at you, it's what you make of it, and you just have to like find yourself and be confident in who you are. Speaking of social media, though, I wanted to ask you guys if any of you use social media to promote your brand or yourself, and how important is social media in building your brand awareness? I know Pengra, you are a blogger, so maybe you can speak on that, being a fashion blogger and designer.
Yeah, I think for social media, it's, there's definitely pros and cons about it. I think one of the biggest perk is just getting out there, being, getting heard. It's just so much more easier nowadays than it ever was. But yeah, like I think social media is a great way to get yourself out there.
Ming, how about you? Do you guys use social media to promote your line? How much feedback do you get from it? Do you get sales from it? Like,
Well,
what's
I
your
mean, like, we do use social media to promote ourselves a little bit, but my sister and I go, "Oh my god, we're such dinosaurs," right? Because we're like, "Oh, we only found Instagram like a year ago, right? We're still in the process of navigating Facebook a little longer, right? But yeah, to us, right, it's quite more word of mouth. And the other thing is like the group that we do fashion shows and stuff, like it's not even the Hmong community. Actually, it's a Black community that we did it with. So it's more, seen through, the Black community in like the Bay Area. And the thing, and then the other thing is my sister and I, right, we know pretty much all the, like the people who does the promotion shows out in California, because we have network to know those people and photographers. So our work is through those, the stylists and the show promoters and the production teams, right? That's how we got to New York, because we knew somebody who was producing in New York. So that's how, we do our promotion more. Social media is, I mean, I guess we're so slow at it because we don't, we call it, I barely get on social media, right? And my sister posts, right? But we don't post a lot. When she wants to post, she'll post a lot. But other than that, I don't post a lot, right? She's the one who does the promoting. And I'm like, I have no clue. I have no clue what we do in social media.
All right, how about you? Do you promote the company that you work for, or does your company promote and use social media? And how big of an influence is it?
Yeah, so I personally don't use social media and I don't really promote the brand, but the brand I work for, we have a huge social media presence. We have an entire team that's really dedicated to it. And I think like moving forward, you definitely need a social media presence. I think my favorite way of looking at it, it's like the easiest way to connect with your customers. And I think if you are trying to start and grow a brand, like you have to be really customer centric, and like customers really love interacting with your brand. Like we ask our customers all the time, like, hey, like what are your favorite colors? What do you want to see from us? And people love engaging with us. And like, yeah, engagement is such a huge thing with social media. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like people are going to just like really, really love you the more you give them a chance to interact with you and all that.
Chong, does social media platforms apply to what you do now, and how since you've been in it for so long, like you've seen how social media, like you can see how it's progressed, so you can see how before you didn't, there really was no social media, but what have you seen? What's your experience as far as the impact of it?
I think social media is a great way to promote yourself without spending money on a PR firm or a marketing firm. And for you to be successful with social media, you have to be great with your contacts. You have to post every day. You have to do stories. You have to do all of that. I mean, me on my own, Instagram, social media. I used to be active, but I'm not that active. Because like you get busy, and so you can't. You really have to devote yourself to that. Oh, 1 second, Tracy. Sorry. Yeah, so you really have to focus to become successful, to use that platform, to the fullest. But I mean, I do most of, I use it more with my dogs' Instagram, and they're more popular. They've brand ambassador. They've been invited to like so many things. I mean, look, they're just more like them. Yes. So I just figure, I'm just gonna stop promoting myself. There's no point. I'm not cute. I'm not hairy. I'm not white. White privilege. So
Yeah, I would follow your dog. But so it's almost time to wrap it up. I just want to maybe go around one more time if you guys want to put out any advice, or like give us your put out say your Instagram so people can follow you if you're open to it. What advice would you give to people who are listening and wanting to get into fashion? Like, what's your last words? Anybody want to start?
If you're really passionate about it, I say go for it, and know that at the end of the day, like it's you who decides where you want to take it. Like you could be whatever you want with fashion. Like as we mentioned earlier, like there's more than just becoming a designer. Like you could be a design director. You could, if you want to do patterns, you love patterns, you could do that. There's so many different routes that you want to, that you can take it. So go, if you're passionate about it, go for it. Yeah.
You can also be a buyer.
Yeah, you could be a buyer. And if you love drawing, you could be a fashion illustrator. Like there's so much more that you could do with it, than just designing. So go for it. Yeah.
Any advice?
Sure. I would just say, kind of going on top of that, just feed your curiosity. There's so many avenues to fashion that you can explore, but even Doua mentioned being a buyer, but maybe there's just a different creative aspect that you're more interested in. Maybe it's photography, maybe it's actually social media marketing, maybe it's something else entirely. Like I've had friends leave the industry and they became like event planners, and now they design these elaborate events. I just think feed your curiosity, feed your soul, and you will be happy no matter what.
How about you, Meg?
My advice is what doesn't break you only makes you stronger. Because me, my sister, right, is you're determinations to go through it. Because there's many ways to come to fashion, to work in the fashion industry, right? But the thing is, right, you have to be determined, and you have to have an end goal. Or is there a goal that you're going towards, and how do you want to do it? Because there is no right answer. The answer is only right for you. That's it. Fashion, is it the right answer for you? Right? Other people say you can be a barrier, right? But if it's the right answer for you, then you're successful. You have creativity in fashion.
Chong, any last words?
Yes. So what I'm going to say is, there are many different positions or career that you can get yourself into fashion. Like everyone said, you don't have to be a fashion designer. You can be a buyer, you can be a stylist, you can be a wardrobe assistant. I mean, just anything. But I want to say, if you want to be a designer, you really have to love it, because being a designer, it's not glamorous. In the front it looks glamorous, but in the background it's not. Like you literally, I mean, I remember when I was working for a company, I didn't have a lifestyle. I was working 80 hours a week. You have to meet deadlines, and when you have a deadline, it doesn't matter if you had something planned that weekend, you got to just cancel and meet your deadline, because if you don't meet your deadline, you're out of a job. And that's the fashion industry. And also there are going to be girls that are as ambition as you and an assistant that wants your job, or there's going to be a production manager that maybe may not like you, they'll give you hell, they'll try to destroy you. And I'm telling you, I've experienced all of that, and you have to have a thick skin. If you don't have a thick skin, then I suggest you don't get into it, because that's the real world. When I was at working at Rampage, I mean, I don't want to say the name, well, I already did, but this girl, she was constantly on top of me 24/7, and you know what, I gave it back to her. Everyone was afraid of her, but I was the only one in the company that she could not control or bully, because I throw it back at her because I had a thick skin. And that's just how it is. I mean, sometimes the owners, they would have to get involved, and I was also.
About Tracy, what about you? Like, do you have any last advice or words for?
I agree with Chong, like having a thick skin and not letting anything factor into your decision. If this is something you're passionate about, just pursue it. Do not let fear factor into your decision of your life choice. And if you don't ever try, how will you ever know? That's my advice. Like, why you're only stopping yourself, so why not try at least? That's my advice.
Thanks, ladies, so much for being on this panel to help inspire the young generation, to give them hope that there's a possibility to go into the fashion world, whatever label that they want to fit into or what role. So thank you so much for being part of this. Tracy, thanks for helping me co-host this. And if anybody that want to get connected and learn more about each Imai or Pangra or Tracy or Chong or Ming's role in the fashion industry, go to the website and it's already linked to their Instagram. So feel free to message them. If they don't message you right away, don't get mad.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.